I will try not to read all the verses. You have them there in your handouts. You can follow up with those um, at your leisure at your home. But the title of the lesson is "You Can't Take It With You," and I think we probably heard somebody say that from one time or another. And usually when people rationalize that thought, is they're trying to make they're making an excuse, or they're trying to rationalize uh, whatever they might be getting ready to self-indulge or to take into excess, or do something extravagant, if you will. And a lot of times, I don't know. It could be a many one things. People will often buy extravagant stuff, and they'll chuckle and one laugh and say, "Well, you can't take it with you." So, want to look at this idea, and not really focus so much in on the faults. In on self indulgence. We certainly want to consider that, but we want to look more into the idea of what happens after death. This idea of material versus spiritual things, and after death, and how we as Christians should be. We people in the world, if you will, they usually draw up a will, a trust, and they um, try to set in motion how they want their property divided up with those that they leave behind. And so we do a lot of planning, if you will, uh, uh, going into death. I see, or brings to mind the commercials that we often see. The insurance that they're selling now, the pay final expenses. People worried that they're going to leave their loved ones with a lot of expenses, and if I take out this policy, that'll all be taken care of. And I guess, and sure, that's some good thoughts, but should we not be more concerned? Are we prepared to die? Am I prepared to stand before God in judgment? Uh, is that something that we should really be paying more attention to? And I'll let you read the parable there, over in Luke chapter 12, and that's kind of our pretext for tonight. Luke 12, 13 through 21, which is the rich young fool. Just to paraphrase some of this. Um, he was everything was going well his way. He had great abundance. Everything that he planted, his crops were yielding great, and so he thought, well, I'll just I'll build some more storage, and I'll be able to cram some more in there, and he just kept on building and building, and finally got to the point to where he thought he could just rest the rest of his days. I've got enough here to do me for a lifetime. Now I'm going to kick back and relax and enjoy the fruits of my labor. And then we see, in the parable, God comes to him that night and says, "You fool, tonight your soul will be required of you." Uh, and and I guess the moral of the story is you know, he should have been more concerned about being prepared to meet the Lord than saving up to live the life of Riley, if you will, into his golden years. So that's our proof text on this idea of are you planning correctly and moving into the life into the ever after. So the first thing I want to take a look at is you can't take anything. We can't take anything with us beyond the grave. And what I mean by we can't take anything, any material possession. No material possession can be taken, because you'll see here shortly in this lesson there are things that we do take beyond the grave. But in this one, we're talking about we can't take anything materialized. So our riches, favorite sports car, our homes, whatever you may get great value or that whatever you hold precious in this life, it really counts for nothing because once you die, it's either going to corrode and fall away or it's going to go in the hands of somebody else. In other words, you can't take it with you. And I remember growing up there, I think it was over in Pennsylvania, a guy he was put in his will that he wanted to be buried in his Cadillac. And so they dug out a big hole and they poured a great big vault and whatnot. And sure enough, they brought in a crane. They lowered it down there and put him in like a sarcophagus. But that was what his will and testament was. He wanted to go to the grave with his Cadillac. You know, I guess so be it. But why would you do that, knowing nothing's ever going to come of that? Again, showing self-indulgence or excess, if you will. Ecclesiastes 5:15, as well as 1 Timothy 6 and 7, tells us that we brought nothing into this world. The classical writer says, and he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hands. So in other words, we came naked into this world and we're going to go out naked in this world. We're not going to be able to take anything with us. So why get wrapped around the axle around material possessions? This ought to cause us to focus on spiritual priorities, realizing that everything that transpires here, for the most part, as far as material things, counts for nothing, counts for aught. And so that should probably predicate us to start planning spiritually and having good spiritual priorities in our lives. Real quick, the classical writer once again says in chapter 5, verses 12 through 14, says, "Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. There is a grievous evil that I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to hurt us." Were kept by their owner to his hurt. And those riches were lost in a bad venture, and he is father of a son, but he has nothing in the hand. And so material things come and go. Here, the guy invested into something, it didn't go his way, and lost all of his money. And so, again, we should plan certainly for here on earth to a certain degree, if you will. But our main priority should be that of spiritual things, because spiritual things is what we're going to take with us. It ought to cause us to also have contentment, to not to strive to live an extravagant life, or if you will. 1 Timothy 6:8 says, "But if we have food, clothing, and these, we will be content." Some translations might say food, raiment, and clothing. The idea of food, clothing, and shelter. If we have the bare necessities, what more should we want in this life? In James chapter 1, verse 11, it points out that the rich man fades away in his pursuits. That money won't redeem our souls. So you can be the richest man on earth, but if you lived a life that was not according to the way that a Christian ought to live, all that wealth will buy you nothing once you leave this earth. Again, you can't take it with you. Only God redeems from the power of death. And that's what the psalmist wrote there. Consider, I don't, and we must, and we will not take the praise and honor of men with us as well. Sometimes a lot of people put a lot of value, a lot of stock, if you will, into a particular individual, perhaps a mentor and somebody that they idolized, you know, whoever it might be, that, you know, we set people up on these great pillars. And I'm not saying us here in the church, but society does. And, you know, again, what, you know, if that's what you're striving for, if you want to go down in history, if you will, you know, what good's that going to do you? You can't, again, you can't take all that praise from here on earth with you. It counts for nothing. I remember being told when I was in the Air Force, we remember Stormin' Norman Schwarzkopf, the great general of the 3-day war over in Iraq, back during I think that was Desert Storm. Anyways, the air logistics guys went in there, and because there hadn't been any modern warfare in quite some time, the idea of letting the Air Force bomb the place to basically rubble, then them roll in, because he was planning on, you know, fame and glory when in other words, when the Army and the Marines hit the ground, that they were going to sweep into Baghdad. But supposedly a Air Force colonel went to him to brief him on his strategy going into that event, and he said the only again taking this is what I was told. The guy told the story that he couldn't get the general's attention, that he wasn't listening, until he said, "Sir, how do you want to be remembered in history?" And he said, as soon as he said those words, the general's ears perked right up, and he listened intently to what that colonel had to say about what the strategy was going in there, and basically that's how he sold the concept of letting the Air Force go in there, level things down, destroy the enemy as far as they could see, then let the Army roll in and clean things up. And of course, you know, and that's how things unfolded. But again, if it wasn't for that guy placating to his ego, it may not have gone that way. And so I think that, you know, that's what called my attention to this here point, that you know, we can't not take the praise and honor men, even though we seek those things. Some may seek those things out. It avail us nothing in the life after the grave. So now let's look. We've talked about things that we can't take with us: material possessions, wealth, accolades from individuals. Now let's look at the things that we do take beyond the grave with us. Obviously, I think, you know, we can say that we will take our identity with us, again, I won't read all the parable. I'll just highlight there. Over in Luke chapter 16, we see the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. It was a parable that Christ gave concerning the what happens when we die, and so he pointed out, I think from this parable here, that he talks about a Hadean realm, that once we die, that we go into this place, and it's divided into two areas. And it's divided by a great divide, if you will, a great, you know, like a Grand Canyon or whatever you want to envision. But you can't get from one side to the other. On one side, it's called torment. On the other side, it's called paradise. And as the parable went, there was a rich man that lived an extravagant life, and had all that he could ever want here on this earth. And then there was a poor man. He was his health was always failing. He was constantly, uh, you know, in need of things. Obviously, had very low quality of life, if you will. And they both die at the same time. When they awake, the rich man finds himself in torment. It doesn't really talk about what the poor man said, but we're told that the rich man could look over and see the poor man in paradise, in Abraham's bosom, if you will. But he said that the poor man was carried by the angels to Abraham's side. And so the reason why I want to point that out right now is that obviously from this parable, I think that Christ was telling us that those individuals could still be recognized or identified to whom they were, the poor man and the rich man. So a certain part of their identity went with them beyond the grave, if you will. And then I think we can also conclude that our character and our conduct is something also that's going to go with us beyond this world. And that's what Matthew 25, verses 34 through 40 points out to us. Where it says, "Then the king will say to those on the right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you for the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me.' And then the righteous will answer him, saying, 'Lord, when do we see you hungry and feed you, and thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?' And the king will answer them, 'Truly I say to you, as you did to the one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me.'" So again, that parable is pointing out that our conduct, the king, they didn't actually minister unto the king, but they ministered unto his unto his people, and of course that conduct or that will go forward with them, and that's how the king said that you had ministered unto me. We can also, I think we conclude from the parable of the rich man and Lazarus that our conscience will go with us. We see that the rich man had recollection to request, let me go back and tell my brothers and my children to get themselves right so that they don't come to torment like I did. In that parable, that man had enough recollection of his past to request to go back and forewarn his family that would continue to live like he was. But of course, we find out that once we go into that Hadean realm, there is no going back. Nobody gets to go back. He was told that they had the scriptures; they'll be preached to what to do, and they need to heed to that. That's their warning. He didn't heed to it, and he found himself in torment. We need to heed ourselves to it so that we don't end up in torment. And we will take our memories, our love, and our awareness with us. Luke chapter 16 and 27-28 says, "Then I begged you, Father, to send me to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, so that they may be warned, lest that they come into this place of torment." That was the rich man's request. I'll just caveat that when we read in Job, our awareness is going to be limited to some aspect, if you will. Job reads that his sons came to honor, and he does not know it, they were brought low, and he perceives it not. So there in that passage, the person in the Hadean realm didn't have full recollection of those things. And as well as Ecclesiastes 9:5 says that after death, that it will not affect earthly events, if you will. It says over there, for the living know that they will die, but the dead knowing nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. We will we will take the results of our lives with us to the other side. Our words, the words that we use, and those will be measured against us. Our works, we talked about that this morning, and all that will be when we stand before Christ on the day of judgment. We'll have to give recollection of all those things, and so those things will go forward with us, whether they're good or whether they're bad. They're going for our reputation, our the things that we've done here, and are going with us to stand in judgment. And you're either going to be found enter in thy faithful servant, or you're going to hear those fatal words, "Depart from me, I never knew ye not." And that's going a lot of people on Judgment Day are going to be in for a rude awakening. Now let's consider that our present impacts our present time impacts our eternal future. Hope beyond death is unique to mankind. That's what the Ecclesiastes writer points out there. That true hope is only in Jesus Christ, and that's repeated over and over throughout the New Testament. John chapter 11 verses right there in verse 26, it says, "And everybody who lives and believes, we should be fully assured that we are going to make it, because if we lived our life according to the way that Christ would have us to live, then we're going to enter into heaven." And we will also leave a legacy when we die. Hebrews chapter 11 talks about those great men of faith. And verse 4 points out that Abel's offering was much more, it was offered up in faith, and it was acceptable over Cain. So just an example of how one's legacy will lives on after we die. Our reputation and our name also will go forward here on earth as well as into the grave. Our influence, consider Dorcas. She had great influence, the right influence, all the things that she did, and people wept bitterly when she died. Acts chapter 9 and verse 39 says, "So Peter rose and went with them, and when he arrived, they took him to the upper room, and all the widows stood beside him, weeping and showing tunics and other garments that Dorcas made while she was with them." And then our children will continue on into the future, and hopefully we will have left them a good legacy to pattern their lives upon, and a legacy of faithfulness, service, duty, and confident hope in the law of Christ. Those are things that we need to adhere to here on this earth right now, so that it does not impact our future in the Hadean realm or on the day of judgment. So I try to get through that as quickly as possible, considering the weather outside. You know, what a wonderful and comforting truth that God is mindful of us, that He has prepared a place for us to live now as well as in the ever after. Uh, uh, Christ told his disciples that he was going forward to prepare a mansion with many rooms, and be awaiting for them for when they arrive. And so, if we're found faithful, we'll have a room in that mansion. Uh, we have a choice. We can hoard up treasures for ourselves here on earth. We can live for the flesh here, and we just need to realize that if that's the way we live, then that's all the reward we're ever going to receive. Because once we die, we're going to wake up like the rich man and Lazarus and find ourselves in a place that we do not want to be in. So be wise about life, death, and obey Christ. And that leads us into the invitation. If you're here tonight, not to try to scare anybody, but during traversing evenings like this is makes for a higher probability of something that could happen. Lord willing, nothing does. But if it does, if something would happen, and it could happen any night that we leave, are you prepared to stand before Christ tonight? If your name is called up yonder, are you ready to stand and give account for all the things that you've done? If you're not, why not call upon the prayers of the congregation to aid you in getting prepared? And if you never became a Christian, why not call upon the Lord and be baptized and become a Christian tonight, so that you can be, again, assured that you'll receive the reward of awakening in paradise once you leave this earth. If you're subject to the gospel call, stand as we sing.